This is CXO Secrets, the podcast that takes you inside the minds of business and technology leaders and reveals the strategies behind their success. Coming up in today's show.
You can find people with moral courage. You are going to, all other values kind of pale second in comparison to that. And for me, that's the thing that has allowed me to be transparent, be honest, make sure I'm making the right decisions. And especially in the third sector, make sure I'm putting the organisation and the mission before myself.
CXO Secrets is powered by EDS, going beyond connections. Find out about upcoming C-level events, experiences and insights at edsxevents.com. Ryan Preece, Deputy CTO at the King's Trust. Thank you for joining us on CXO Secrets.
David, thank you very much for having me. Really, really glad to be here.
Now, where are you and, well, what's your week look like so far?
So I'm joining you, first of all, from a very grey Shropshire today. So it's kind of Shropshire-Cheshire border. My week so far has been relatively smooth, he says, on a Friday afternoon. I had a finance system go live last week. So last week was a week of chaos and mania, but met with a relatively subdued and peaceful week this week with only a couple of days of travel to some of our sites of the King's Trust. So yes, nice peaceful one for me.
Pleased to hear it. Today, we're going to chat about your mission as Head of Business Technology and Deputy CTO, as you say, at King's Trust. I want to talk about the importance of nurturing internal capabilities that are good enough and looking to the future. Perhaps we can touch on where the King's Trust's mission and indeed IT with your hat there, where they overlap. That's the loose sort of plan, if that's all right. First, though, could you sum up for our international listeners, and we do have people from all around the world who watch and listen to CXO Secrets, could you sum up the King's Trust and what your role there is?
Yeah, absolutely. So the King's Trust, for people who haven't heard of it, formerly the Prince's Trust, formed 49 years ago in 1976 by now His Majesty the King. So we are very excitingly going to our 50th anniversary next year. We are an organisation founded on the basis of trying to end youth unemployment. So right now in the UK and Northern Ireland, we have just over 900,000 young people not in employment or further education. So to put that into perspective, that is the size of almost Birmingham, so the third largest city in the UK, are not in employment or training, and that's young people between the ages of 18 and 30. So we primarily exist to offer training, support, courses, mentoring, funding to enable young people to build the confidence, skills, and give them the opportunities they need to progress into either the world of work or self-employment. My role at the Trust, so as you said, Deputy Chief Technology Officer, I'm responsible for our technology estate, so the number of applications we have to enable those delivery functions to go out and do that fantastic work with young people, as well as our fundraising functions, the amazing work that our fundraising team do to bring in funds to allow that to happen, as well as our support functions across finance, people, governance, legal, etc.
Now, you are new to the role this year in 2025 as we speak. How has that onboarding been, and what have you found since you've landed at the King's Trust?
Been really, really interesting, David. So I'm not new to the third sector. I'd spent 7 years previously at another large charity here in the UK, a life-saving organisation. So I understood the mentality of the third sector and some of the priorities and some of the struggles that the third sector faced. However, I think going to any new organisation, you go in and you unearth, you turn over rocks. My background is enterprise architecture and solution architecture, so I've always been intrigued by the architectural view of an organization, not just from a technology perspective, but people, process, and data primarily. What I found was some really, really mature areas who have understood the need for their processes, people, data, and technology to align to enable effective delivery of their service, as well as some legacy applications, some legacy systems, as I say, we went right live with our new finance system last week. The original one that I inherited was put in 1996. So we've got some archaic technology as well. But what it gave us was a really nice platform to be able to move forward with, to design a to-be architecture that we hadn't overinvested in, but equally gave us room to grow, become more composable, and ensure that our teams are working together so that we're getting the best value for money out of our systems. Similarly to that, I found a team that worked into an effect, but wasn't the most optimal. We didn't have an architecture function when I joined the trust, and we were very, very single product driven, which in the third sector, being a non-technology organisation, is quite a hard thing to fund. And we've got 186 applications at the trust. We certainly don't have 186 developers, architects, product owners, etc. So we had to make really sensible decisions about how we put them together by service. So now we've got fantastic domain architects and service owners sat in that space. So I've met a team that have been actually really, really open to that change. I somewhat foolishly, in some regards, decided to do a restructure on week 4, which might have been my best and worst idea in one go. But what we've ended up with is a really, really strong team with a really aligned set of principles, values, and a real clear direction of where they want to go across technology, digital, data, infrastructure, and cybersecurity.
So with the benefit of third sector experience at the point at which you came into King's Trust, you really hit the ground running by the sound of it. There were some transformation programs already in progress there, but here you are 9-10 months into that as we record, and you've been able not only to make your mark and to shape things as you feel they need to be shaped, but also to see through existing transformations. And like you say, some pretty big changes you've overseen over your first sort of almost year there. Now, you may be too modest to bring this up, Ryan, so I'm going to bring it up for you. I did see on LinkedIn that you were recently named Rising Star in Tech Leadership 2025. And on the post that I saw on LinkedIn, I highlighted a quote from that particularly resonated from me. And it says, "Technology for us is not just about systems and infrastructure. It's about enabling people to do their best work and making sure that every interaction with King's Trust is simple, supportive, and impactful." I think you've covered all the bases there, haven't you, about it's not technology for technology's sake. There's a mission there, and it's about whether you are an internal user of the systems or whether it is your customers, clients, the people who you are serving, that their interactions with you and your systems are also as smooth as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. I'm not a technologist out and out. That's not where my career started. So I somewhat fell into this space, and I've always been on the business side of technology. And that's really helped me in so many ways to understand what's truly important. And I talk a lot about people, process, data, and technology, and it is in that order for me. I'm sure if anyone ever tried to put my job at risk, I'd deny saying this, but I'll say it on a podcast. Technology is a true enabler. And as technologists, it's our job to realize that it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work that out, but to understand what is needed in the technology function, that we are here to deliver the services that our organizations need. And third sectors are all mission driven, they're all driven by a cause, they all exist for a reason, and they exist for the time that they're needed, no less and no more. So our time as technologists within third sector organizations, it's to ensure that we provide the optimal services, technology, data platforms, and ways of working that provide the best level of service to our consumers. And that's how I've really, really focused on building our technology function here and other organizations I've come into interaction with. It seems to be the right way to work.
Well, let's delve into that a bit then. You mentioned you didn't envisage going into technology when you began on your career journey. What are the stops on the journey that have taken you to the King's Trust now then?
I'm sure you'll hear a lot of people saying that no one means to fall into architecture. My background started off with Ministry of Defence. Working within that space, and then fell into, back in the days when the MOD were trying to go digital with their products, stop people walking around with clipboards and pens and paper. I led part of the journey into the data space to make that happen. From there, my world led into a short time in HMRC, working within their cost engineering department, and that was my kind of first foray into architecture. So looking at the total cost of ownership and the cost engineering, the Monte Carlo modelling required to ensure that we have costed solution designs that are sustainable, and we're using taxpayers' money wisely. From there, I've realised that architecture was my passion, and had a foray in the Cabinet Office around the time of the UK exiting the EU, and doing some work in there. And then, not to give you my political persuasion, but decided that maybe I wanted to go and do some good, and I would try my hand in the third sector. So was really fortunate to be offered an opportunity with the RNLI, who are a large life-saving charity within the UK and Ireland. You will have probably seen big orange lifeboats if you've ever been to the coast of the UK, or lifeguarded beaches. So I was really fortunate there to be in and lead a number of teams across data and architecture, really setting up those practices and ensuring that they run efficiently, or inheriting them from people that have done fantastic jobs of kind of building the foundations, and working from there. And I spent a 7 years at the RNLI and had an amazing time, and it's an organisation that holds very dear to me. You can just have to look behind me to see a picture of a lifeboat on a wall. But the opportunity to lead technology at the Trust came up, and it was a really good challenge for me. I think all too often, especially in the third sector, because so many people buy into the cause of the organisation they work for, they spend a long time there. And whilst that means you have a huge amount of organisational knowledge and you build a real passion for the organisation, it can also reduce your breadth of awareness of things going on in the sector. So the opportunity to go and work for another large British charity with a real strong culture, a real strong mission, and something that has a heritage and brand identity. I'd left the RNLI in their 200th year, and I joined the King's Trust in their 49th. So maybe I've got a love of garden parties and celebration. But the opportunity to go and work for another organisation and see how they do things, and hopefully learn from them, but also take some of the things I've done at the RNLI was not an opportunity I could turn down.
It also strikes me, though, Ryan, as though there is an alignment of purpose and mission there, and the organisations that you've worked for, whether it's MOD or working in central government, and then the RNLI and now Prince's Trust. There is a very clear mission. You are saving lives. You are enabling young people into the workforce. There is a real tangible outcome for that. And if you are a public servant-minded person, that mission is really, really important. And that personal alignment then with the company or the organisation that you're working for, and they are also on a mission as well. I can see those two things coming together, which maybe is the constant thread through a lot of the roles that you've just described to us.
Absolutely. It's critical, David. For me, I've thought about going into the private sector. I will reassure you that no one works in the third sector because we're taking home huge bonuses. That's not why we choose to work in this space. It is because we are driven by leaving something better than just a profit margin or lining shareholders' pockets. I have always said, even on the worst day in the third sector, all you have to do is go and watch a lifeboat launch, go and stand at one of our programs and watch some of our young people go from not being able to sign up to a program or talk to people to going into full-time employment. That is the drive, and that's what, regardless of where we work, we should all be pushing to ultimately make society a better place. And the third sector technology community is relatively small. We all tend to move within the same circles and get to know each other quite well. You will find that across any technology leader or any leader within the third sector. We're here because we genuinely care about what we're doing. We care about the cause, and we care about driving that change. And that's what keeps us here.
So for anyone who's watching or listening who hasn't worked in the third sector, or doesn't have within their peer network anyone who's working there, and is maybe just, been working in private sector and used to the budgets, used to the that environment, how do you describe the context of working where you work now, what are the main sort of challenges that you come across? Is it just budget? Is it the speed at which you are able to move? How would you define those?
So I think the third sector budgets, if you speak to anyone yet, the budgets are the big thing. We are trying to do the same things as large organizations, but we're trying to do it with a fraction of the money available to us. So if we touch on AI, and I promise I won't talk about it for long, but AI is not for giving to us as a charity. We don't suddenly get cheaper cost because we're a charity organization, but we're trying to keep up with the market trends and obviously the growth in AI at the moment. And the same goes across technology. I think the other thing third sectors are guilty of are being torn between what is the right decision, because there is the commercial model, and every organization has a commercial model. We need to bring money in to keep running. So you make decisions based on what is financially the best thing to do. And that is where most private sectors will make their decision, what's going to impact the bottom line most. But we're also torn between, actually, we're young person first. So many of our decisions will contradict themselves, because what is the right decision financially isn't the right decision for enabling our young people. So we are sometimes torn between making the right decision for our service and financially the right decision to protect the organisation. And I think if anyone out there can find that balance between making those perfect decisions, that you don't occasionally sit on the train out of London feeling somewhat conflicted over, are we doing the sensible thing, the head or the heart? Are we following that head or our heart in our decision making? Then I'd love to have a chat with them, because it's always a payoff.
And part of the conflict there is not only the right decision, but right sizing the decisions that you do make and the capabilities that you do deploy. And something I know you've spoken about before is the importance of building capabilities that are good enough. And this is an exercise, well, more than an exercise, a program you've been through at King's Trust. But I think it comes back to a story that I heard that you learnt at the RNLI about right sizing stuff. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So you'll hear, if ever anyone it has the fortune or misfortune, however you look at it, to hear me speak. I talk a lot about capability modeling and the need to understand your target or dynamic operating model as an organization, and working out whether your capabilities need to be outstanding, effective, ineffective, or non-existent. And all four can be true across your organization. And that describes to you how much you should invest. And again, from a people, process, data, and technology perspective, how much you look to invest in delivering that capability. And I toyed with this for a long time, and I spoke to lots of people. And the best example, as you're alluding to, that I found was I sat with our executive team at the RNLI, and I said, what does our life-saving effect need to be as a capability? If we're going out there and saving lives, be it on the beaches or on a lifeboat, how effective does that capability need to be? Outstanding, or does it need to be effective? And bar none, everyone said, well, it needs to be outstanding. We need to be the best in the world at life-saving. Really, really interesting. And most people would sit there and go, yeah, absolutely. You want to be the best in the world at life-saving. And when we got down to the kind of brass tacks of it, what we worked out was, if you want to deliver effective life-saving, you send that lifeboat out, it goes into the water, you've got some fantastic crew on there, the hand goes in the water, it pulls the person out, the life is saved. Fantastic. If you want to deliver an outstanding life-saving service, you send the lifeboat out, you put the hand in the water, it rescues the life, and that person is saved. But it costs you £10 million more per year because you are maybe over-investing in that capability. You're giving kits to people that is too mature for the need. You're over-investing in the build of your lifeboat. You are putting too much money into your technology. You're setting fireworks off when you save a life. Actually, the core purpose of that lifeboat going out is to save that life. So we need to do just enough to make sure that life is saved and that person is protected, because what we don't spend on that rescue, we can spend on the next one. And yes, we want quality of service, but also we want to be able to save everyone. And the same goes for the King's Trust. We want to deliver fantastic services to our young people, and we need outstanding people to do that, but we probably just need effective technology. We don't need to overinvest in our technology if we've got outstanding people. And everything is a choice in that space. And I see this across so many organizations where people want to be outstanding in everything they do, and that's rightfully so. But it's about what is that total organization's need, and actually where you're outstanding in certain areas, it allows you to be effective in others.
And bringing that right back to the micro focus there, or maybe it's the macro focus, maybe it's both. Sometimes getting to the simplicity is the most complicated thing. And you mentioned there the word effective. Ultimately, there's a binary in there. Are you saving the life or are you not? And you can put the effective and the outstanding and the not quite sufficient and they're not really doing it really to one side. It's understanding what is the thing in the middle of that you need to have as a 1 or a 0 and focusing in on that.
Exactly. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a really good way of looking at it. Once you understand the mission, the cause, what you're aiming towards, you can make the decision on how far you go to get there. I'm a massive petrol head, and for me, I always think of it in a Kia and a Bentley. Hopefully, will get you to the same destination in a similar time, but the journey will feel slightly different. And how far do you invest in your car is exactly kind of the mentality of that. Overall, your aim is to get to the destination, and how you choose to get there and how much you invest in that is entirely down to you.
Coming back finally for this part of the conversation, Ryan, to investments. Ultimately, what King's Trust is doing, it's investing in young people. It's supporting them into work, as you say. But there's a conversation I think to be had that brings together King's Trust, the King's Trust's work and bringing people into the workplace, alongside your reflections on how the workplace is actually changing right now. What is the workplace that young people are joining? And in particular, you mentioned earlier on about AI. It's foolish of us to imagine that AI isn't changing the workplace and the workplace that my children will be going into. It's an entirely different place to the one that I went into, and with all kinds of accelerations taking place, digitally enabled accelerations. It's probably going to be a very different place in even 5 years' time as well. What's your reflection on what young people can be expecting? What maybe different challenges they will be facing as you are helping them into the workplace?
It's a fantastic question. And at the King's Trust, we are doing a review of how AI will impact the jobs market and ensuring that we as an organisation are set up to support that. So we look at AI in 3 buckets at the Trust. One, what are the skills young people are going to need to move into a workforce enabled by AI in the future? Secondly, how are we giving people the tools to be able to go and positively use AI now? Things around CV writing primarily. And then thirdly, how do we become more effective using AI as internally to our organisation? I think what we're seeing is AI will create jobs. There is no doubt about that, but the job market will fundamentally change. The jobs that, as you say, you and I applied for leaving school won't be jobs possibly that exist. We see less people working on tills now than we did do 10 or 15 years ago because we've seen automated till services. We've seen bookkeepers dramatically reduce. We've seen developers starting to level off in the technology space and less roles available in the developer market. So what we're seeing is the bottom 2 rungs of the ladder are changing. So we're seeing more generic skills around prompt engineering becoming really, really important to us as organizations, and that ability to write really, really intelligent prompts will be hugely valuable to people. But we need to ensure that that bottom 2 rungs of the ladder don't disappear, it changes. So in that we are still ensuring we're giving people the skills and opportunity to get on the ladder, and we're not kind of pulling the ladder up from underneath us, because that's my worry in the tech space. And I'm sure that's a worry of a lot of young people that I speak to, is we don't want to remove the entry-level task-driven jobs at the detriment of then stopping those people moving through their career into senior leadership roles. My big reflection is around the legal space. Actually, we're seeing a lot of legal organisations use AI now to do work that paralegals and legal secretaries would have done historically. But that's where people in legal sometimes cut their teeth. So actually, if they're not having the exposure in that space, how are they then moving that into senior careers within within the legal market, and the same is true of most industries now. So we need to make sure that as an organization, we are giving people the confidence, the skills, and the generic training that allows them to go into any workplace, because that's going to be what makes the fundamental difference when they go for those interviews.
And of course, that's part of the King's Trust's mission, but it's also a much broader mission of parents, of everyone who works in education and preparation for adult life. It's a big challenge, and I still don't quite know how we're going to find all of the answers, but we will. It's good work you do. Thank you for chatting with us about your background, about your work at King's Trust. Before we let you go, though, there are a couple of questions that we ask all of our guests on the show, Ryan. We call this show CXO Secrets. So what is your secret? If you were to put your modesty to one side for a moment, what would you say is your key attribute that you believe has enabled you to achieve what you have so far?
I'm trying to put my modesty, my ego to one side, and it's not that I don't have an ego at all. I think it's the reason I've probably been able to get to where I've got to in my career at this stage is applying moral courage to my decisions. I think I've probably had some people would describe as my best conversations, and some people would probably describe as my most career limiting, by ensuring I stood by my values, my principles, and having the moral courage to stand up and speak when I think we were doing the wrong thing. And I think that is, if you look at all the values that people can have, I think that is the first amongst equals. People need to show moral courage. I think it was World War II General Slim who stood by this point. Actually, if you can find people with moral courage, you are going to all other values kind of pale second in comparison to that. And for me, that's the thing that has allowed me to be transparent, be honest, make sure I'm making the right decisions, and especially in the third sector, make sure I'm putting the organisation and the mission before myself.
We do a Pass the Question on this show where guests have an opportunity to put a question to a future guest, whoever they may be. And Ryan, we have a question for you from previous guest, Mindaugas Matsouras, who is CTO at Vinted. And he asks this question.
When have you felt most alone in your role, and how did you work through it?
Good question, Mindaugas. For me, it would have been when I took my first senior leadership role, and I worked with a woman who said to me, it can be quite a lonely space. And I didn't really understand what she meant. But I sat there, and when you've got the first big decision on your shoulders, and you feel somewhat isolated in being able to make that decision. I remember being sat in the office, and it was winter, and it was nights were closing in. And I remember being sat in there alone thinking, actually, the decision I make now will impact what we do as an organisation and the people's jobs that are affected by that. That was probably the first moment I'd felt really alone, and I didn't know who to turn to seek that advice, and it was on my shoulders. I think that was also the naivety of my career, and it's how I overcame it. I think I also thought that decision was just on me and it was just on my shoulders because I was the only person in my role. But actually, I had loads of peers. They may not have had the specialism or the SME or the area that I worked in, but they had the experience and they had the knowledge to know that so few of our decisions are based on working in technology, working in people, working in finance. They're based on the culture of the organisation, the mission of the organisation. So I've built a network of trusted people in the same role as me across organisations, or peers within organisations that I can lean on to trust. And they might not understand what I'm talking about, but they'll understand why I'm talking about it. And that's always made it easier because they give the common sense response to me. And that's been a huge difference.
Those peer networks, you're absolutely right, are so important. And I've spoken with so many CIOs, CISOs, CTOs, CXOs, whatever flavour, and they all say the same thing. There's, as you rise through an organisation, eventually you reach the top of that triangle, and there aren't other people who have that same responsibility, and decisions do fall on you. And as you've rightly identified there, other people are asking exactly the same questions, feeling exactly the same potential loneliness, and there is a really good support network out there. Sometimes it needs you to reach out to those to your peers in order to make those connections. But then when you do establish that network, it can be so very helpful. Thank you for that, Ryan. One final question, and that is, what question would you like me to put to our guest on a future episode of the show?
I've enjoyed thinking about this. For me, and it relates to the work that we do at the King's Trust. If you are sat in your CXO position and you're looking to build your leadership team, what are the main attributes you look for in creating effective leaders and an effective leadership team?
Good question. And that's definitely not one that we've had so far. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed for that. And, well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us on CXO Secrets this episode. It's been really, really great to chat to you.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, David. Really nice chatting.